Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our panelists for the Fireside Chat with tomorrow's industry leaders.
So guys, welcome to the final session of SampleCon. Quick introduction, I'm Indy Blackwell, as you can tell from my accent. I'm British, so I've just got over my jet lag, ready to go back tomorrow, which is going to be fun, right? So look, really, it's a privilege to be here. It's my first SampleCon. I've been part of the board for about 18 months now, Rachel. Is that right? About 18 months-ish as well. So look, I'd like to thank everybody, first of all, for being here. I know some of you were at the Speakeasy last night, so I don't know if there's some jaded heads around the room as well. Everyone's shaking their head. But, you know, I wanted to start off with a little bit of audience participation. So could everyone stand up? You're all going to I'll never be invited back now. You know that, right? So stand up. First of all, it's a fireside chat. So if you're on the outside of the room, can you grab your stuff and move in so we can have the last session is a bit more intimate? Yeah, come and sit on the chairs, you know. They've not been utilised fully. Can I have the water, guys?
There's extra water.
Down there.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, great, brilliant. I won't make you do star jumps or aerobics, don't worry. I'm not going to go that far. But look, we went to the last session was really interesting. Yeah, so keep standing. Now sit down if you studied, sit down if you studied market research as a discipline at college. Okay.
A few people.
Sorry? Yes, sit if you have. Sit if you fell into the industry. Sorry, got that wrong. Keep standing. I'm a bit jaded. Keep standing if you fell into the industry. And now sit down if that was over 5 years ago. Fantastic. So we've got, you know, why I wanted to do that was that obviously we talked about a lot of people having been in the industry for 20 years plus. You know, not many studied it. They fell into it. You can sit now. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for listening. So look, you know, a lot of people fell into it. But what we're finding, I mean, I'm not from the industry. I joined 3.5 years ago. I've been at 8 different organizations. In my career, 3 different industries as well. And I've joined this industry because it's so exciting. You know, it's at that transformational edge. It's at an inflection point. And what I'd like to do today is actually brought some panelists with us to really talk about what's going to create the next generation of leaders. So I'd really like to introduce my panel. So we'll start with Ben.
Ben Coates, VP of Technology at Quest Mindshare.
Max Nanis, CEO of General Research.
Facey, Paradigm Sample. I lead the bids and supply team, and also I'm involved in strategic partnerships.
I'm Elizaveta, or I go by Lisa as well. I'm a field services manager at Chadwick Martin Bailey. I manage fielding for projects and also bid requests.
Brilliant. So look, let's get the conversation started. I mean, we've all joined the industry at different points in our career. A lot of us fell into it. We've just kind of established that. I mean, what excites you guys most about this industry at the moment? Max, you're ready to speak.
Well, what excites me is that it's a land grab. I'm competing against what I perceive as neo-Luddites. They're not necessarily a tech industry. They're not tech-focused until maybe a few years ago. And so I look at what's going on in the Bay Area. That's a big part of my background. And that's lost on a lot of this space. And so I see opportunity from a tech perspective.
From a tech perspective, and I know, Ben, you've got quite strong opinions around the tech, and we were just talking. So Ben's been at a lot of industries, right, as well.
Yeah,
so Ben, talk about your perspective from a tech angle.
Yeah, so, I mean, may not be entirely popular view, but I think that there's a long way to go, right? I think that this industry is well behind many others in terms of the way we're applying technology to the problems that we're trying to solve. And that just allows for tremendous opportunity, a lot of opportunity for innovation. And obviously, that's what kind of brings tech to the table. That's what keeps our engineers there, is challenging problems to solve, fun stuff to do, and a long way to go. So excited about it.
Brilliant, good opportunity. Andre?
Yeah, what excites me, I think, when I look at panels, like what is the next thing? You know, when I came into the space, you know, I was fortunate to come at an exciting time with panels when they're sort of thriving in their prime. And then, things kind of pivoted a bit to mobile. So I think what excites me is essentially what's the next with mobile? How are we going to leverage it more to be able to have respondents access it more? I think, when we're looking at respondents, sometimes they're sort of conditioned to kind of go in one particular method of accessing surveys. So I'm kind of excited in the future to see how we could be more creative and innovative with having our respondents access platforms and devices.
What did you get out of the session earlier on with the respondents on the stage? Is that all the stuff you've known about and you've been talking about as well? What are you doing about it and how are you pushing?
So I thought that panelists, I thought it was pretty cool. Just hearing them speak and some of the feedback, I actually thought they were from some of our panels because, I think one of the things that is critical is for you to have this ongoing two-way relationship with your panelists. And I think that part of the equation sometimes gets escaped. I think, we spend a lot of time investing in trying to build and recruit these panels, and then we're kind of blindsided by the maintenance piece in terms of the engagement and the model, in terms of keeping them active. And I think that's the part where we really need to kind of take a step further and try to be a little bit creative. Like at Tell What, we give our respondents a platform essentially to create their own fun surveys and also create quick polls. And going with that sort of stance, you're kind of investing in the equity of the relationship, and they have more of this community feel, basically. And I think that really is sort of where we got to look at things, paying more attention to essentially things from a relationship perspective with our panelists.
Yeah, I think that was loud and clear, wasn't it, from earlier on in terms of the communities. Elizaveta, how about you from a methodology standpoint?
Well, also from methodology and a personal perspective, I think that the ways in which tech can disrupt the industry is also exciting to me because I've seen it, make the daily lives of researchers easier and my own. As someone who has to manually clean open-end gibberish for some of the studies that I manage, it's nice to start having access to tools that learn to detect those gibberish patterns that we look for. The truth is that these solutions just aren't perfect yet. So, like Ben was saying, there's still a lot of room for the growth, but it's something that eliminates my more cumbersome tasks, not necessarily the bloodline of the work that I do, but I think it's something that would free up my time and to focus on some of the more important things like the actual analysis. So I'm excited about these tools that could automate some of my more tedious work.
Fantastic, good. I think the other thing that's been brought up, it's been apparent in the industry for quite a few years now, is the amount of capital formation coming in and the investment coming in. And I know that we talked about this and it was a room of two halves as well in terms of what that means.
Oh, can I interject
at some
point between Ben and Andre, because we don't want to sound like we just complain about the immaturity of tech.
Right.
But what you said about mobile, I think is a prime example of how immature the industry is. So we do yield management, and I know Exchange API is better than anyone. And there's ambiguity on all of these APIs and all of these definitions around is mobile. We see that in the endpoints, and there is an unknown definition of what that means. Can this survey be done on mobile? Do you want somebody who is actively on a mobile device? What is a mobile device? Is it a touchscreen? Is it based off user agent? All of these are very important questions that aren't just technical, because then you can upsell, you can monetize that to your buyers, because they're very different questions. Whether or not somebody is on the bus on their way to work right now on their Samsung or iPhone is very different than whether or not the survey is mobile responsive. And none of that is well defined from a tech perspective within the industry.
How do we do that, Max? What are your ideas?
Open data standards. And no one is willing to do that because of ego and arrogance, and it means that competitors have to work together. But there's no consortium, there's no standards body, and until that happens, we can wave our hands around how bad survey quality is, because your definition of what A, B, or C means is entirely different than what this other person's definition of those things mean.
Can we learn from other industries?
Biomedical, semantic web, Wikidata, there are all very clear organizations that have done semantic data structuring in the past and still do, so yes.
Yes. Ben, any comments on that?
Absolutely. I mean, There's been a lot of conversation here this week. And from what I hear, there's been a lot of conversation over the last several years about, we need to standardize qualifications. We need to have trusted data exchange. We need to, improve our UX and basically all of these things, right? I mean, that's been reiterated over and over and over again this week. And it's one thing to say it, and it's another thing to do it. And I think even that's been called out. But I'm really not seeing the action, right? So I think there are plenty of us here, and there are a lot of smart people in the room who are very motivated to do that. So let's set up the meetings, right? Like, I have a LinkedIn, connect with me. Let's set up sessions and actually start talking about it and actually solve the problem. Because based on what everybody's saying, it's kind of a sense of doom, right? Until we actually address these things. Yeah. So let's address them and not just talk about it. I know he'd be willing to sit around and define some standards, so let's do it.
There's a common phrase, garbage in, garbage out.
Right.
And we are throwing garbage in right now.
Yeah, I think Sandy said it earlier on, I don't know if she's in the room. I think Olivier said it as well, but it's about consolidation. We're consolidating, but it's about collaboration now, right, to kind of speed up and move forward. Right, so the next question from me to the panelists, there's been a lot of investment. We've all heard about all the M&A activity. I mean, literally there's news every week. You can't quite get away from it. Good or bad? I know the room is split on this as well. So, Ben, Max?
You go first.
It's neither good or bad. It's strategic in various ways. I love seeing it because it tells me there's a lot of fear in the industry. If you see somebody who's innovating and they're growing fast and you're afraid, well, rather than compete, you throw money at the problem. And as a small company that I think is innovating, that means what we're doing is actually scaring some of these Goliaths, right? And so that should excite everybody who is not, from the industry in the past.
Yeah. What does it mean for innovation, though? Do you think? What's your view?
It means that you haven't been doing this for 40 years where you started doing telemarketing. And so you can approach it from an interdisciplinary standpoint with fresh eyes, right?
Andre?
And just speaking of fresh eyes, to Max's point, I think where we're at, basically, I think we need to kind of look outside of the box and look at other different industries and people from different backgrounds and walk of lives and skill sets to get their perspectives on perhaps how they could contribute to the space as well. I think somebody touched on this in the discussion yesterday, just saying that they actually weren't from the space, but coming in and being able to come in with a new or different angle on things, certainly, the stakeholders and the people around them saw the value in that. So I think more and more, and especially as we're leaning on technology, we need to kind of have a broader open mind and spectrum on things and perspective and welcome other insights and feedback and opinions as well.
I think for me, when I'm working on the field management side of things and I hear news about like Schlesinger has now acquired 2020 and over the shoulder, now they're a one-stop shop for me when I'm getting bid requests and I can use them to get the qual recruitment needs I need, quant recruitment, certain technologies, certain platforms. So it's nice in that perspective when you're working with larger companies, but on my end, I like working at a smaller company. I just think there's advantages in the teamwork and the collaboration that you have at a smaller company. So personally, it's hard for me to say whether I like to see those giants coming in or not. I'm comfortable in my position very much, like working at a smaller company, but then being able to work with the big guys who now have all the resources to give us in just one-stop shop.
I'd just like to add one more point. I think it's a great time for the industry in terms of all of this movement that we're seeing. I could have never thought that I'd be in an industry where there is a company associated with an NBA team. Like that's this next level. Like 10 years ago, I would have never thought of that. So it really shows where we are in other industries, whether it's sports, whether it's finances, whether they're recognizing that we're valuable and certainly it's an attractive industry to be associated with. So I really think this time is exciting, and I'm kind of looking to see more opportunities like that kind of just come up.
Can I piggyback on what Andre said earlier about thinking outside the box? So I think there's a lot of discussion of that too, right? Thinking outside the box. And it's really kind of a catchphrase. But what's important is that you then embrace the thinking outside the box, right? And if you're looking at everything through the lens of an adaptation of kind of a legacy methodology, you know, phone studies and all of this sort of stuff, just adapted to online, that's not going to get you very far, right? Because there's all this thought around targeting who people are, right? When should we really be doing that, right? Should we maybe not be targeting what people know and how interested they are to speak about it? And technology allows you to go just incredibly far with that. So I think we really need to embrace that out of the box thinking and really kind of think about the ultimate goal of what we're trying to achieve and work our way to that and totally change everything about how we're doing this, how we're targeting, how we're engaging from the ground up.
I don't think I would hire anybody from the industry. When we recruit,
Right. So,
I look outside because I do want people from outside the box. And
Max, you wouldn't hire me?
so we said we had a great resignation, and it's happening here on stage. Right.
I just want to add something quick. I agree with Ben's point. I think right now we have to pay a lot of money in CPI to get really qualified people. But if you're getting people who are passionate about what they want to talk about, they might even do it for free. Like if they want to get their opinions heard and get them across to everyone else, I think Max was talking about people's political opinions yesterday. Like people are passionate about that. If you don't have to pay them a $30, $50 CPI if it's something that they really want to talk about. So targeting people based on what they know is definitely the way to go.
I think even on the panel before, the panelists that were a part of panels that came here, I think one of them even mentioned that they do it just for the feedback aspect. They really feel passionate about giving back. So yeah, to your point.
Great. So, I mean, obviously, we've heard about the Great Resignation, war on talent. I mean, we've got great leaders in the industry. It's a really attractive industry to be in at the moment. There's a lot of change. What do we need to do you think, to make sure we're attracting talent from inside and out?
money.
Okay,
it is unreasonable to expect any of the companies in this industry to pay feigned salaries. I don't think anybody does. And so it's unreasonable to then expect you recruit feigned talent. Ad tech pays way more than anyone in here ever would. I pay feigned salaries and I've had no one leave. I give them hard problems and that's what it takes, right? And there's talent all around the world, but the companies in this room at this conference, that is not why they hire internationally. They hire internationally to save money, and that comes with a certain cost and burden associated with it. And that needs to change, right? If we want to compete with fintech, look at Glassdoor on Stripe, right? No one in this room pays that to their engineers.
Some food for thought. Any other comments on that? And what about Andre Elizaveta in terms of leadership skill? Yeah, attracting talent.
So I think also when we look at the next generation, I also think they're not brand, there's no brand loyalty, I don't think, with the upcoming generation, or they're not committed. Like if they're not feeling you, they're not feeling you. So I think with that, we really need to, in terms of how we move forward as an organization, there has to be some purpose there. I think they're going to want to be more aligned with that. I think they're going to want to know what is your organization about, what causes are you associated with, in terms of the data that you're collecting and obtaining. What are you guys doing with it? From a transparency or visibility perspective, is it because I think some of the times maybe that information is not really out there to the employees, like really to the extent of what are you really doing with the data? We know we heard back from the client, yeah, they're happy, the experience, yada, was good. But did it really help something to go off the shelf? Was it, I don't know, life-changing, whatever? I think that's one of the big things that we're gonna have to do for this next upcoming generation is be able to kind of convince them and let them know, hey, you're a part of something, you're a part of this purpose, and and I think they'll feel more value that way.
It is very hard to recruit engineers when they go out to a dinner party and somebody asks what they do. They have to explain that they work really hard to pay people $3 an hour. Sub-minimum wage is not something you want to brag about. You're not changing the world, right? That's not something to take pride in for a lot of engineers, particularly in the Bay Area.
I also think more creative jobs would attract new talent. I'm not saying we don't have those companies in the industry. We have plenty of creative small startups, but there's also, the companies who've been doing things the same way for the past 10 years, survey design in Word, send Excel files, your standard, 50 slides in PowerPoint. And the next gen is Gen Z, right? And they're a creative bunch, they're vocal, they're progressive. I think creative jobs would attract more talent from them, and research and recruitment that's more creative, like through mobile and apps and video, which we keep talking about for the past several years that we need to do. But I think those are the ways that would attract the younger talent.
And work-life balance.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, and that was mentioned earlier on as well. I mean, you guys are all here. What keeps you in the industry? I know, Ben, you're new. What attracted you to the industry? Start with you.
Actually, it was completely accidental. I had a recruiter reach out to me, and what really attracted me was, as I mentioned earlier, exactly how much room there is for innovation. Like Max said earlier, for tech people, it's really all about how interesting the problems are to solve. But I don't think that just applies to tech, right? I think that applies to everybody. They want to be part of something that's interesting. They want to solve hard problems. Most people, I would say, at least in kind of our age demographic, which is a large portion of what we're trying to hire, they're not interested in punching a clock. They want to be part of something. They want to be creating something, no matter what their job is. And definitely that applied to me. That's what brought me here. That's what keeps me here. As long as I can kind of create order out of chaos, I'm happy. And then when I'm done, it's boring and time to move on. So we have a long way to go, though.
Yeah,
so
you'll be here
for a while.
You'll be here a while, Ben. Brilliant. Max?
So I was in computational biology and drug design. And a big part of that is then taking that into clinical trials. And there's this statistical problem, the k-mean arms multi-bandit problem, and it's used in clinical trials, except it's maybe with a couple hundred participants. And I had learned about market research and realized that I can apply the same problem that we've known about and have had well defined. There's no single solution to it, so it's an optimization problem, but I can apply that to market research and eat everybody's lunch. Except rather than dealing with a couple hundred participants at a time, I get tens of thousands a minute, right, of people going into surveys. And so I can apply that same statistical problem on like a far larger scale, and that's sexy. That was cool. That was what got me excited, because when you make like 1% improvements to it on a low number of participants, okay, maybe you save some time and that's good, but when you make incremental improvements using this algorithm to millions of people, we have a clock that shows how many hours per day people have spent going through our system. And every single like percentage improvement, I can be like, oh, we saved a human life last month because of this improvement, right? Because of parent efficiencies, right?
Yeah,
that's
cool.
tangible.
Yep, that's cool as well. Andre?
What keeps me here? When I came into market research, like I said, I started with online panels, but then I also had the opportunity to work in other facets or part of the industry, building like insight communities and community panels, and I think with that experience, it kind of gave me a solid understanding of what it really takes to build and grow a panel, and I think this. The changes that I've seen over the past several years has certainly kept me intrigued. And then the people, of course. I think conferences like this is great, and then just the people at Paradigm. The culture is pretty cool in terms of leadership and just support. And yeah, I think those are the things that have kept me wanting to stay. The people and just some of the recent changes that I've seen within the industry.
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's pretty simple how I fell into it. I took a market research class in college, and I liked stats and numbers and data, so that's just what I applied to afterwards. But what keeps me here? A few things. I think, well, for me, it's the work-life balance of working from home, which I've had the privilege of doing for several years. But in terms of the actual industry, you know, I agree with Andre, the people in conferences like this, the evolving topics. I mean, we talk data quality, survey design, disruptive tech, recruitment methodologies, different populations, just so many things. I feel like I'm always learning new things. I'm not really bored yet, so I'm still here. And yeah, I'm always meeting a ton of people smarter than myself, so it's good.
Yeah, and I think we heard a lot about, you know, that people don't work for a company, they work for people.
Right.
So that's why you joined. I mean, in terms of leadership styles, the work environment of the future, what's that going to look like, you know, in terms of the individuals we want to attract?
I'll say,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say maybe we gotta lead with empathy, really be in tune with our talent, basically, our work, our future leaders. I think that's critical. I also think, empathy definitely is what comes to mind for me here.
Yeah, I can bounce off that. I really agree with the empathy point. I think as businesses shifted to working from home,
Yep.
in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and researchers, you know, they had to recalibrate their priorities and their methodologies. I think that's really when the need to practice empathy came into focus. You know, now organizations are moving to more hybrid work models, and in-person research is back. But I think the need to prioritize empathy stays, like, as we've moved from like a very different shocking time, you know, and we're kind of trying to come out of it. I think that the line between personal and professional kind of got blurred during this time, and then not necessarily in a bad way. I mean, I think it put a fresh lens on like how we take care of ourselves, how we take care of our families and our communities and our businesses. So whether it's through the ways we address client challenges, or how we collaborate and work, or the pace that we work at, I think the foundational driver of what we do should always be empathy.
I would interpret empathy too as being empathetic towards what an employee wants. Mm-hmm. Like I hire a lot from academia. These are not individuals that care about money. They wouldn't be in academia that way. And so you need to understand what incentivizes them. And yeah, that could be working from home, you know, being able to accommodate. They want to be on a beach in Mexico, and that's cool with me. Or if it's understanding that they don't, I have this guy who I would not let near any of you because he would insult everyone. And it's like, he is very good at his world, and that's all he wants to do. He doesn't want to deal with people. And so don't promote him to be in a role in which he's doing something he doesn't want to do. Don't promote to just futility, right? Get him into his world and keep him efficient there and keep him happy. And it takes more than just money. It takes more than conventional incentives in the corporate world to do that, right? That shows that you care about a person.
Right. The day of like, you know, what can my employees do for me? That's over. That was over a long time ago, and we need to embrace that. It's really all about what we can do for our employees. Any of you have tried to staff over the last 2 years know how difficult it is and know what we are up against. You know, the remote landscape and the ability for, you know, salaries and professions not to be regionalized has really changed everything. So, you know, I think a lot of us, especially in tech, but probably everywhere,
Yep.
we've had to change jobs every 2 years and move from one place to the next in order to get a raise, right? In order to get a promotion. And that's absolutely ridiculous. It's so expensive to have to replace somebody. If they ask for $10,000 more, give them $10,000 more, for God's sake. If they're ready for a promotion, they're ready to take the next step.
I've got a few staff members who are nodding at me at the moment in the audience.
Go for it.
Go ahead. Max.
I also want to say a big part of it is the employee respect of the leader. And I can confidently say nobody wants my job because they see how stressful and how hard, and that I'm the last person up on Slack and the first one to do a pull request at 3 a.m. And they don't want that responsibility. And so they respect what I do. And there's that mutual back and forth. And I would find it hard to believe that every company is like that.
Servant leadership all the way to the top.
It's my responsibility to be putting in 110% on top of
Right.
it, right?
To understand your employees, right, as well. Coming back, I was going to ask a question I was told not to, which was, who's the best boss you've worked for and why? But, just for a career standpoint, I thought I'd best not. But the kind of leadership skills that you all admire, if you had to call them out, maybe the top 3, what would they be?
Sure, I've got a top 3, I think. I think first and foremost, being passionate. I think if you love what you do and you lead by example or show that, I think that ultimately leads to more workplace satisfaction. Your employees see it. You need good energy where you're working. And I think that that passion should be translated to caring about your employees, like we've just been talking about, developing others, like whether that's through training your employees well or building personal relationships with them, or just positive reinforcement to let them know that they're valued. I think those are all good things that a leader does. And also I would touch upon prioritizing diversity and inclusion. I think, that's an important topic. We're constantly talking about it. We're still going to have to talk about it for a long time. And I'm not talking just about survey design. I'm talking about like representativeness, within the company, like especially in an industry like market research. How are we going to better understand different groups of people if we're not even employing those who would be best at understanding? I think that if we're so concerned with representativeness in the sample, or just hearing from many different voices, then we should be as equally concerned with the representativeness of the employees within a company, because ultimately they're the ones that are going to be doing the reporting and analysis, and I think the different perspectives are necessary.
Great. Andre, were you going to say something?
Max, you want to take it?
What was the question?
Admired leadership skills, yeah.
Measure twice, cut once. I think with a lot of leaders, whether it's a publicly traded company or not, they want short-term wins. And long-term thinking is a very hard personality trait to have in a leader. They want the sugar rush, something immediate. And in a tech world, a short-term win comes with a long-term debt. And it's very difficult to have someone who understands the importance of doing it right the first time. And that might mean the project gets delayed by a year or month or whatever your timeline is, but it means that there's less debt. It means that everybody takes more pride in what they do because they're happy to put their name on it because it was done correctly, right? It wasn't just churned out to be able to meet some goal.
Servant leadership, respect for your employees' skills and what they bring to the table, and caring about who they are and what they care about. That's going to win every time. Doesn't matter what industry you're in.
Yeah, I think Rob said it earlier on, right? You don't always have to be the smartest in the room, right? Learn and listen to people. Andre?
Yeah, I think, to what Ben said, I think being passionate. Also, I think a leader that, walks the talk, not just just talks things, leads by example, certainly. And then I also think that diversity as well. I think that's huge. I'm starting to see more and more of a change, but I think we still have a way to go with that.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're coming up to the last question now, I think. We've got 5 more minutes, then we'll go on to questions. But parting words of advice to the leaders in the room.
Can I interject around diversity and inclusion?
Yeah?
I think it's kind of naive to talk about diversity and inclusion when 3 years ago we were trying to talk about accessibility, and that still hasn't been solved. And so diversity and inclusion just come along with accessibility of everything we do. And so I realize that's at the employment level, but what we put on the world is not accessible to a significant portion of the population. And
Go into more detail. Yeah, what's that mean?
You can't run a survey to ask people what's their favorite screen reader, because no survey can work with a screen reader. And that's a very simple, inclusive behavior that a company could do, and no one has cared about that yet. And so we've shoved that under the rug and have moved on. And I don't want people to forget about that, you know?
Good, all right. So, parting words of wisdom. Ben?
So, I mean, I think I jumped in on it earlier, like, let's move, right? There's an awful lot of talk and everybody says, let's move, but let's actually do it. We have a lot of problems to solve. Like I said, my LinkedIn's open. Let's set up some schedules. Let's set up some meetings. Let's define those standards. Let's solve these problems. A lot of people are making strides, you know, individually in certain areas, but we're not going to kind of break the wheel unless we do this together. So that's what we need to do.
You are never too big to fall.
Right.
And there's a lot of old money. There's a lot of power in here. But until organizations are willing to understand where this industry is going, they can't just push their way of thinking. We've had an exchange in this industry put out a new, not an API, but something that exposed all of their data that goes through. And that is amazing to me because that is a massive company that has listened to a lot of our feedback, and they were willing to make a change because they realized that while we like to call ourselves market researchers, we are commodity traders of human labor. And rather than looking at how things have been done, I let this exchange know you have to look at the CME Group, Chicago Mercantile Exchange. That's a commodity market. You have to look at New York Stock Exchange, all these other exchanges that have been doing this correctly, you know? And I've pressed them that if we want to call companies in this industry an exchange, but like I can't buy a future of a 32-year-old female with a blue minivan, that's not actually like a bidding strategy. That's not actually like an exchange. And so people are starting to listen to what real advancements in market research will be. And that's very much appreciated. And just trying to push the way it's been done isn't going to stick.
Quickly, right? Is what I'm hearing. We can go quicker. Andre?
I think to not be resistant to change. I think, you know, things have probably been done a certain way for such a long time. Mm-hmm. And I think, I guess maybe sometimes the higher ups, they feel like since this is working, probably this is as good as it gets. But I think sometimes we really need to kind of be uncomfortable and try to revisit the wheel. And yeah, I think so. I think certainly just being open-minded to change.
Right.
I think the one thing I would add is not being afraid to tell our clients what can actually be done and what expectations are reasonable. I know we try to please them as best we can and try to give them those 45-minute contract surveys that they want, like we've been talking about, but sometimes it's just not the way to go in research. And I think there's a problem, you know, even sometimes in my role, I see it of just like telling them that we can do something that's really gonna deplete so many resources and probably not even gonna be possible. You know, I don't want to go to panel companies and ask them for unreasonable requests, and I'll have panel companies that say, oh, we're gonna pass, but then occasionally you get one who's like, oh yeah, we can get you 300 super high net worth people in Ohio for a $30 CPI. And then I go back and, you know, tell the research teams or the client, like, yeah, we have someone who can do this, and they're like, great, you know, you're awarded the project, and then, you know, they're upset when we're actually 8 weeks into field or fall short on the number of completes that they wanted. So that's just a personal frustration of mine I wanted to share.
We didn't bid on that project.
Yeah, don't hold
you're
back.
Good. Paradigm's good.
Everybody's talking about, you know, this frustration with the whole pre-screening, qualification, screening people out, asking redundant questions. You know, I think that's kind of the last thing that we can do is just change that, right? Like, marketing has been doing this, and they've been doing it freaking well for a long time now. We can find out all of that stuff well in advance. We don't need to ask people these questions.
Know it well in advance.
Exactly. You know, this is easy in every other industry. Let's just do it.
I do also have to comment the way things have been done, the part of the future. Prime example of that. Every marketplace in this industry has an API. Don't send me Excel files. I don't want that. And you know, when we talk about efficiencies, when you have Excel files, you have project managers and you have cubicles and you have all this overbloated staff.
Well, he's pointing this at me. I'm from Cint.
Yeah.
So he mentioned it earlier on. So.
And so it's like, you can say you want to use an API, you want to have these efficiencies, but like, oh, we want some of the old ways still around. Pick your lane and commit to it, right? And that has yet, I think, to really fully be done.
Good. Great. I think, Rachel, how are we doing for time? Do we have questions? Yeah, Q&A. Any questions?
Targeting, just totally change it, right? I mean, like I said earlier, it's about what people know and what they're excited to talk about. You know, I can hear the argument, you know, coming from people that, like, clients in the industry, they've been thinking this way, right? And you're not going to break that pattern. And I'm sure that there is some legitimacy to that argument. But that being said, I think we can do the same thing in different ways, right? Follow the trend of marketing, follow, you know, the whole machine learning driven identification of the right people. Ultimately, what it all boils down to is how confident are they that they're going to be a complete, right? And machines can do that really damn well. So focus on that instead of this outdated, outmoded targeting based on marketing lists, right? There are much better ways to do it.
I think one of the things that's crazy outdated is commissions. Like somebody will come along to this industry and create a open sourced exchange where they don't take like 60% commission. And that's gonna eat all these exchanges lunch. And it's gonna be automated, and it's gonna be mirrored with, you know, some of these conventional, like the CME group. And the whole last panel, or 2 panels ago, was all about compensation, right? And the compensation is already there. It just doesn't reach the respondent, right? And so when all of these middlemen that, you know, everybody, we all take our own cut, but as that gets more efficient, then that will rise the whole tide, and everybody will be happier from that. And so I guess it's just like exchange or delivery efficiencies, right? Because this is software, there's no overhead, right? The overhead is arbitrary because it's labor costs, right? And that will dramatically, I think, change over the next decade.
Andre?
I mean, I think respondent experience, I think we have to look at the way and the types of surveys that we're exposing our respondents to. I've heard this on a number of topics throughout the conference, but I think we really need to look at that. You know, I think we need to take a next step instead of being order takers with our clients and saying, yeah, good to go, we'll move forward with this. Thank you for the approval, the money, all that. I think we got to really take a more of a consultative stand to say, hey, this doesn't look good. This is not going to jive with what we're trying to do here. Perhaps maybe eliminating this, back to your point, you know, making things more tighter. So I think we have to really look at the overall picture of what we're doing objectively with the respondents and what we're exposing them to.
Yeah, I was going to say shorter LOIs, which is just part of the respondent experience. I mean, we keep talking about it, but at a full service agency like where I work, I mean, I'm typically still seeing averages of 20, 25 minutes, and ultimately that's hurting timelines, that's hurting data quality. Yeah, so I think that's the biggest thing. That it would also help me in my role loads when I'm reaching out for bids. But also going off of that, in terms of bidding, I would say we should stop focusing on, or research teams, I would say, should stop focusing on like who's got the lowest CPI. Like if they have a super cheap CPI, I think you should be questioning that. Like, how are they recruiting and how much are they actually incentivizing their respondents? You know, we should actually be vetting partners more closely. Yes?
No, keep going.
Vetting partners more closely, figuring out how they recruit, not just seeing how much can you do this for. You know, we want to know where are they sourcing these people, and if they are paying people a little bit more for a survey, I think that's actually a good thing. Clients typically have the budget. We should be getting the better quality sample, not the cheaper sample.
I want to expand on that to say modern day yield management looks at far more than CPI and conversion. And so it is okay to pay people a small amount if you are a great experience for other reasons. And so I don't think buyers really understand that if you have late-term quals or late-term failures, or you have high recon rates for questionable reasons, that will live with your buyer profile for the next year. Sophisticated suppliers penalize buyers on, I can say we do over 120 features that we look at when a new survey comes online with real-time time stats that come in. And yeah, CPI is one of them. Yeah, LOI is one of them. But surprise, we don't trust any buyer CPI or LOI anyway, right? And so we look at buyer behavior longitudinally over the past 90 days to, we have some buyers that we've been monitoring for 4 or 5 years. And so your behavior is always remembered. And I think buyers need to recognize that.
Well, that's why I also say look into the partners' recruitment and sourcing methods. Get to know the partner versus just seeing what they cost.
Right.
And avoiding panel might be a good idea. I mean, I know that whole phrase is probably not very popular, but I think looking at things from a transactional perspective, as opposed to an opt-in panel, respondents joins this for this to be, their job and their whole life. We had these people up on the stage earlier, and that was a big thing they do, right? And they are very passionate about it. And I'm sure there are plenty of people like that. But if we're really focused on quality, right, it's all about engaging people when they should be engaged, tempting them with the stuff that is tempting to them, and inferring who they are ahead of time and making it a very targeted offering. And sometimes that's catching one person one time with one particular offer because of everything that you can infer about them in advance and pre-qualify them based on it. So, I mean, I think taking a second look at the whole concept of a panel and looking at some of the benefits of a transactional approach might get us a lot farther and make this whole thing more sustainable.
Great. I think we've gone over time, haven't we, Rachel? So, okay, do we have one more question then before we all clap? I say thank you. No, well, fantastic. Thank you very much to my panelists. Thanks, guys.